So I'm gonna begin with a quick round of introductions. If each one of you could start with sharing your name, your current role, and what excites you about the role of AI in security, we can get started. So I'll pass the mic to you, Dheeraj. Let's start with you.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see a lot of known faces here, and happy to be here as always to be a part of the BBC community. By way of introduction, my name is Dheeraj Khanna. I am the Vice President of DevOps, SRE, and Product Security at NetApp. The charter for this role is very simple. We host a lot of our customers in multiple hyperscalers. The one part of my role is the uptime, reliability, and availability of services in these hyperscalers to our customers. And the second part of my role is making sure across the entire cloud, my team is responsible for product security, which means innovating, which means mandating and governance, and also finding the right tools which make the developer productivity for the entire organizations more smoother and more efficient.
Thank you, Dheeraj. Nikhil, you want to go next?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Nikhil Gupta, founder and CEO of Armor Code, and also one of the original founders of Purple Book community. At Armor Code, we are helping organization reducing risk using AI-powered ASPM. As we'll be talking in this session here, all applications are like, everybody's in the world is getting impacted with AI, and applications are the center of the universe, whether it is car manufacturing company, whether it's a healthcare company, every company is a AI company, and super excited to be on a panel with the esteemed panelists, Dheeraj, Wen, and you, Anshuman. So over to you, Wen.
Thank you. My name is Wen. I've been in the industry for 2 decades, starting from the pen tester, red teaming, eventually AppSec spaces. Been working with several large global enterprises. And in my previous role, I actually embed and build our own AI model to help us to solve complex problems at the time, which there's no vendor or tools outside that's available for us. When I see in AI is that in AppSec space, we often struggle between 3 things: quality, cost, and time, right? So we can always stretch that and find a balance within it. However, with AI, this is a disruptor to the industry or to the world, which we can definitely then change that paradigm. So we might no longer need to balance that like we used to, but we'll have to find a new way to balance it by introducing this new cutting edge technology.
Awesome. Thank you, Wen. All right, so the first topic that we want to discuss today is to use AI to secure product development. And the first question I have for everybody here is, how do we use AI to identify and resolve vulnerabilities earlier in the software development life cycle? So if you can share some insights, tips, tricks, your experiences around that, that'd be really nice. I'm going to start with Dheeraj, and then we go around the table.
So AI, I think we are, to be honest, a lot of us, but I can only personally speak for our company, we are evolving, especially in the area of product security. We are early adopters, but at the same time, that road is very long and there's a lot of learning path in this. So what we are using, AI and AI tools, both in software and by use of external tools, is areas and outcomes that we are focusing on, finding code syntax errors, semantics errors, data flow problems, vulnerability problems, and the strategy that we are trying to do is, rather than building our own solutions, which will take time and may not be as good, we are looking at solutions which are available as COTS products, and we are trying to use security tools which have AI solutions embedded in them. Some examples are, we are actively using GitHub's Copilot, we are using CodeQL. So these are some of the tools that we are using to enhance our AI capabilities to find security threats in our code. Same way, there are tools from VM vendors, SaaS vendors, who are providing AI capabilities. So we are trying to integrate those AI tools from the vendors to leverage for our best use. So that's how we are using AI capabilities today. And I think outside of the product security, there's a very heavy effort across the entire organization to use AI tools, specifically Copilot, in code development.
Yeah, I think we get around some questions about, how do we decide whether to use AI tools or build something in-house. But I think for now it makes sense to sort of address, how can we resolve all of these earlier. So thank you for that insight. I want to go over to you, Wen, next, if you want to share some insights there.
Sure. I think, on top of that, my add to this is, in our world and from a tooling perspective, I think always struggling with, precision and recall, meaning false positive, false negative problem, right? So then if you optimize for false negative or, reduce number of false negative, you probably have to deal with a lot of false positive then. So how do we do that and how can AI help us? Other than using AI or machine learning to help us just to build a better capability, in the old way, we've been using people, engineer to augment that, looking for finding, triage it and validate it and then tune it. And then so that we can then, keep this scan clean and precise and tailored. But then in the AI world, this can be changed too. For example, instead of human reading it, we can have the AI to do it. We can have it repeatedly giving itself a feedback so that we can tune the scanner so that it will optimize for false positive, false negative balance.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nikhil?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think so. As Dheeraj said, AI is going to revolutionize the way code are written, and people are making bold claims that 70 or even 100% of the code will be written by AI, which I think is a little bit of exaggeration in my mind. But what's going to happen here is because of the amount and the quantity of code that will be written with AI, which is further trained with open source models and all. So I believe we will need much more code inspection, if you will. And as a result, in product security, application security, the frequency at which one will be scanning the code will increase. And we are on the other side, we are helping build products to help companies solve their problem using AI. We have customers and prospects we are talking to who are going to pump in 7 million findings in 1 hour, like 7 million findings in 1 hour. And at that rate, what you have to do here is, as Wen and Dheeraj mentioned, yes, you have to have those scanners, whether it is Copilot and everything else, but the number of findings that will be generated will be significantly higher. So there will be two aspects to it. One is kind of having the SCA, SAS, DAS, RASP, all of these tools generating more findings using AI. And then the second part, which becomes the challenge on the application security and product security team, especially for every AppSec engineer, there is 200, 300 or 400 developers, is how do they find a needle in the haystack? And this is where, tools and platforms like application security posture management comes into play, which will correlate and prioritize and ultimately help remediate it. So there will be two aspects. So definitely one should look at these scanners, next generation scanners, because some old scanners which were built 10, 15, 20 years ago, were not built for this particular purposes, cannot run the scan at that pace. And then, like the second piece here is when you are using the next generation scanners, then how do you consume that information and immediately assign it? And from the developer perspective, everything at the end of the day, everybody's internal customer is the developer. And what you don't want to do here is, instead of giving them 10 findings to provide fix, you provide them 1,000 findings to fix. And that is where you need to make sure you are having a platform or a layer which is, ingesting the findings and helping prioritize it.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this problem quite a bit myself. I've been, an AppSec practitioner for about 15 years now. And I believe, with AI, we are seeing this intelligence explosion, right? Where it's really possible to create code, insecure or secure, you name it. And I think the way I like to think about, how do we resolve or address vulnerabilities is, we've been speaking about shifting left for the longest time in the AppSec space, right? But what does that shift left mean? We've tried to integrate, scanning and CI pipelines. We've tried to build some Git wrappers which scan the code as it is being committed. But I think that those kind of solutions haven't been really effective. So I believe in the new world where we are starting to see organizations use AI our code editors like Cursor, Windsurf, Client, and with all these technologies like MCP, right? I think it is finally I'm seeing a world where it would be possible to basically scan the code as it is being committed in the IDE itself. And I think that's the best way to think about shifting left, because we are trying to generate secure code, secure by design code, right, without even it getting deployed somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see as organizations are still wrapping their heads around, if it's okay to allow their engineers to use like some of these AI code editors. But I think that's where the world is heading towards, and it'll be very interesting to see if we see any drastic increase or decrease in the number of vulnerabilities which are being found. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic to discuss, and hence we are here. So, Nikhil, you mentioned something about, we are seeing some bold claims from various AI leaders suggesting that AI is going to write 70% and even 100% up to the code, right? So, do you agree with these predictions? I know you mentioned that it's not going to happen, but when we see some of these frontier labs like CEOs claiming that by the end of 2025, we are going to see like 70% of code being written, how does that make you feel? And what do you think organizations should continue doing in order to make sure that they handle the risk effectively?
So I think so. Those are bold claims, as I said earlier. And if you're talking about 100%, I think so. Reality is 20 to 30% will be kind of used to the automatic AI generation and all. Because if you look at it, we have been talking about replacing IBM AS400 for more than 50 years. Dheeraj and I have, like some of us are old enough who have seen and worked on some of those things. And once the businesses are working, because ultimately code is written for building an application to deliver some outcome. And if you're a large financial company, if you're a large insurance company, then once your outcome is there, which is safe and secure, you're not going to go back and change it. So the way I look at here is the newer applications would be more and more written in AI, but the older applications, because like I have worked 25 years ago in Bell Labs, right? And we were writing mission critical software. At that time, the software which was written 5, 10, 20 years ago, it has changed several hands. So I don't think so any developer or any engineering leader will feel comfortable to get, because AI is only as good as the context and the information it can provide. So having said that, I think so the diversity will be very high. So you will have a complex hybrid environment. You will have, and we have customers who have all the way to IBM AS400. They also have data center, like we have been talking about doing cloud migration journey for 20 years. Still, if you look at a lot of medium to large organization, they still have a lot of data center. And third is public cloud. So it will add a fourth dimension. It will add a whole bunch of LLMs and everything else. So the complexity will increase. And that's why I believe that the need for having a platform, something like ASPM, which is correlating, aggregating, and both not only the application side, also on the infrastructure side, because what will happen is these code scanners will not only increase the findings or the vulnerabilities on the app side, it will also do on the infrastructure side. So that is how I see it is there. And anybody who's planning and designing the AppSec program should keep those factors in mind.
Got it. Dheeraj, Wen, any follow-ups or insights there?
Yeah, I think I'm very excited as well as nervously cautious about this, and as Nikhil said, like a lot of that code, there's an aspirational need from the teams that, hey, let's move everything into, AI generated code. And while that is good, I think for a good period of time, AI will be very useful in creating boilerplate or repetitive code. There is still a need for an engineer to look at the designs. If you look at, back in the day, IDEs were, their job was auto code completion, right? Syntax errors and things like that. Now, Fast forward a few years, today we are probably 20-30% of the code is generated by Copilot or AI or Code Whistler or any other tool that you have. Go 3 more years forward where an agent will start writing full code snippet. So you will have a multi-line codes, multi-file codes. The PR sizes will become much bigger. So there's an analysis done that 50% of a developer's time will actually be spending reviewing code than writing code. That's an interesting thing. The second thing, there's a new term in the industry which is called as a moldable development environment that is evolving. I don't know if you use tools like Glamour Toolkit and others, where it's you today you look at a PR, it's a red green diff of code snippets, and it's very for a person who has not written code, it becomes very difficult for them to analyze is that code work that AI generated correct or not. So I think now these moldable development environments are giving visual contextual annotations of code, which is going to be very powerful. So as I see, the future is very bright, but I think then an oversight by a human is still a strong need for the hour. Looking at system design, looking at interoperability around legacy systems, integrations around APIs, they will become where a lot of human interface and interactions will add value. Repetitive code, by all means, I think AI tools can generate that. So I think, a happy marriage across human intuition as well as AI is the order of the day.
Absolutely.
And definitely agree to everything everyone said, and then and just kind of piggyback on that is that we probably have to start thinking about, and then not thinking about, but observing a new development practices and pattern right now, right? So instead of really thinking about developer thinking about how do we code this stuff in the future, we can think about, is the code generated for me actually is optimal case, right? So as a review, not really code, but thinking a deep layer on, this is actually going to work. Is it going to work better? Instead of actually spending time, typing, 100 lines of code and stuff like that. So it helps us to focus on the bright side, the optimistic side of it, saying that developer now gets to work on higher value tasks, right? So elevating from a coder to some level of architect related capability, right? And so, but then also the other side of the cautious side is that, what about hallucinations? How can we help that? How and all the new and that unknown possible issues that we haven't recognized today, right? So we definitely need that level of parity, but in the future, we're probably going to become less of a coder, but more of architect.
Yeah.
I think there's this interesting saying in the industry, or kind of a prediction that will AI replace developers? So AI actually, in my opinion, AI will not replace developers, but developers who know how to use AI effectively will certainly replace developers who don't know how to use it. So I think that's a big distinction, is that it's change is the only constant. The sooner we embrace new technologies and new change, the better it is for our professional skills. So as a developer, as a programmer, I would probably certainly do that, where I would actually up-level my skills and be more AI friendly and aware.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I've heard the same, where people are constantly asking questions where AI is going to replace them. And I think it's just the mindset needs to change about embracing the change, like you mentioned, Dheeraj. I think yesterday there was an internal memo which got leaked by Shopify's CEO,
Yes.
where he clearly mentioned that he wants the organization and employees to use AI. And I think that's the kind of forward thinking that I would expect to see more of in the community, and that's so good to see from companies like Shopify, right? So yeah, absolutely. I think we're all on the same page when it comes to whether AI is going to replace the jobs or not. So that's right. Awesome. I'm going to move on to the second topic, which is all about AI tools. And the first question I have there is, with the explosion of AI tools, how can security leaders ensure the tools themselves don't become a risk vector? I will open it up to anybody who wants to go first this time.
So yeah, I can start here essentially. So there are again, Wen and Dheeraj are saying that there's no silver bullet at the end of the day. When you're writing automatic code, and I guess this can be written by or looked from two perspectives, right? So one is from the Armor Code as a platform provider, and Wen and Dheeraj as a consumer, right? So from the platform provider, ultimately it's when you're writing a security software, the responsibility is even higher, right? We have seen so many times that where you have like a backdoor left or anything of that sort, and that can impact, right? And I guess what we have to do here is, and we constantly do, is ensuring, and just like anything else, AI tools are trust but verify, and we actually ourselves use AI tools to generate some of the code. But as I mentioned earlier, we are not kind of blindly trusting it. We are looking from architect perspective, and we have to see, hey, which area is, just like, let's say, a particular widget which is a standard, makes sense to expedite it and use it. And what we believe here is that ultimately we have to have some kind of governance and a guardrail capabilities, right? Governance, because security is a mindset at the end of the day, right? So we all are here security leaders. We have to think from that perspective. And when you're looking about whether it's a software security or securing your home, how you look at it is, if your house is on the main road, then you don't leave your front door open, right? As simple as that. So similarly, when you're writing a software, you're making sure you have OWASP top 10 and you have infrastructure is protected. Then the second level here is, then you will protect it and try to add more checks and balances over there. So that is where you want to make sure that the tools we are using secure, the code which is generating, and the way we are doing here is we are creating a guardrail, right? Because what's going to happen is, again, coming back to the point I mentioned earlier, more software will be generated in more shorter time. So what we do here is that we are having sure that with each DevSecOps pipeline, we are ensuring that every level, when it's go to SCA, SAS, DAS, and when you are going from development to testing, each time you are doing a check. Now, historically, what used to happen here is, and we have, all of us has worked in very large organization, we would have a change control board, right? And depending upon the company size, you may have 100 million finding, you may have 50 million finding, you may have 50,000 finding. And those finding doesn't mean your software is insecure or something like that, but you need to have a good vigilance, and kind of that's where I talk about governance and guardrail, that none of those issues are critical enough, because otherwise you can spend your whole time writing or fixing vulnerabilities which are not even true vulnerabilities or exploitable. So that is where we look at it here, and that's where, again, the governance layer is even more important, that you check at every level. And second piece here is, before I hand it over to the other esteemed panelist, is that the third party risk, right? So you also want to make sure that the software you are using is secure from third party risk. You are ensuring you have a software bill of material, and that is where application security, product security, all of these things are kind of there. So that's my perspective, Dheeraj and Wen.
Yeah, I think there's certainly this skepticism that will AI bring its own risk vector, and which is a true statement. But I think the way, like back in the day, whenever we were adopting a brand new software, security software or any third party software, how would companies do that? It's almost like they would use, a separate, unbiased body. And unfortunately, I am lucky to have worked in a company, or still in a mid-sized company, where there's a governance body, which is a completely separate from a product organization or an engineering organization. And that governance body views every single new software that comes into the company with a complete fresh pair of eyes and an unbiased approach. So the same rules apply when we bring an AI vendor and the usual checklist for governance will apply to that exercise as well. Now, I think the terms will change. You have to actually learn things like what is data poisoning, bias, and backdoors, and creating private LLMs. But the rules of engagement remain the same, that there's separate governance body. We have a very efficient governance body, and we engage with them. And it's almost like the analogy I'll give you is that you can learn driving from any driving school, but when you go and give a driving test, the examiner does not care where you learned the driving. That examiner will pass you or fail you depending on how you're doing in the test, right? If you did not stop at the stop sign, does not matter, because then there is no bias. So I think that's the beauty of these organizations, is that it brings it is independent of bias or any cognitive associations prior to that.
Wen?
Yeah. So again, just kind of piggybacking the conversation, is that's nothing different than bringing a technology like we used to, right? The brand new thing is technology. We need the governance around it. We need our, management around it. We need our validation around it. It's a tool, or you can think of you onboarding a whole new team, right? So it's not. We already have process and things in place, or practice in place, which is how to tailor to the uniqueness that you bring, like, the bias, the hallucination, things like that. So once we demystify it, we'll feel more comfortable, less uncertain, then we'll be able to manage it better.
I think one of the example, the litmus test was, we were evaluating Armor Code's product, and it was almost like a good 3-month due diligence exercise that we went through with the product evaluation till the time we started moving our production data into it. So I think that was a good exercise. We learned, and there's value in that, because for the company or the new security product, they also use that as a product ideation roadmap. A lot of times new ideas come in and they say, yeah, this is an important thing. We should put that as a product feature. So it becomes a win-win situation for both the person who's purchasing the software and the person who's selling the software.
Yeah, so I think what I'm gathering from this particular conversation is that generally organizations have some kind of a governance structure, right, which has been the case for a long time now. So I think the rules of engagement aren't going to change a lot when it comes to implementing some of these AI tools. But I think with some of the AI tools, the attack vectors definitely change and are slightly different. To give you an example, there was a blog recently where people who use cursor IDE, and they can just kind of fetch these things called cursor rules from the internet. And if these cursor rules have hidden malicious characters in them, it's these characters are not visible to human beings, but AI tooling can actually interpret those malicious characters, and it is possible to install backdoors and all of those stuff. So I think from an AppSec practitioner standpoint, I believe that having the right skills, having the right folks who understand some of these new attack vectors are also going to help the governance structure in an organization to create some policies and regulations around that. Because if we don't do that, I think it's a wild world out there. Folks could be doing anything with regards to implementing cursor rules, or standing up MCP servers which are insecure. So yeah, I think there's a need from my perspective, where AppSec leaders and practitioners need to be more opinionated about how they should go about implementing and approving some of these AI tools. So,
and just to add to that, Anshuman, like when we say governance, I don't want to intimidate the audience here, because typically when you say governance, you start thinking about, compliance and other things. Governance to me is more of best practices, right? And again, the idea here is this: we want to encourage developers to use tools like Codium, Cursor, or other things over there. And developers before itself were not very security savvy. Now, when we are talking about white coding, you will have business people writing code, that makes it even more challenging. And when I say governance, it is about that, okay, you get the code from anywhere, doesn't matter, but you need to run the SCA, SAST and all very fast with the best practices, whether it is coming from the right repositories. And this is where having the posture management, independent posture management and governance is important, because when you are, let's say, and ultimately you may or may not be submitting code at every hour, but that's the future, right? Because what happens here is, let's say, when I started writing code, we used to have a release once in 6 months, because we are writing telecom software going into likes of AT&T. Right now, even those organizations are writing once a week releases. And again, agility is one of the most important stuff from the business. When more AI coding is coming in, every company will be disrupted. Every company, right? Whether you are a Fortune 500 or you are a startup. Now, in that particular case, you have to increase the pace. And so now, from let's say 1 month to 1 week to a daily basis, and you are getting code from various angles which you have no control over, then you want to make sure that my security posture is good, I'm getting the output, are my critical issues in there. And the only way to do is automation. I call it as AI is a fancy word of automation, right? And so that's what I meant here, is to look at it. And again, I had put it into the chat here also for people, like especially for this particular question, software supply chain becomes very important, having a mindset. And that's so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think apart from software supply chain, I think one of the other thing I would emphasize here is this concept of like secure by design or secure defaults, right? Like if organizations can figure out how to build secure design, right, or how to make the security problem go away, I think the amount of code that is going to get generated with AI, it has the option of becoming more secure, right? So I think focusing on more on the secure default, secure by design is also has some merits to it. And I think organizations should pay attention to focusing on those aspects as well.
Actually,
Awesome.
I think this is interesting. I think this is a critical and a very important topic. I think there's always going to be a conflict or a dichotomy between process governance and innovation and agility. These are like two competing priorities, right? While they are both important. So I think it's almost like, a developer wants to ship code faster, and a DevOps or an SRE person wants to keep things stable. So they're always at odds, in terms of what their core priorities are. But I think the most important part is that, for all the companies, big, small, that agility and nimbleness is a very important aspect. Governance and process should work for the organization. It should not be the other way around, that the organization is working all efforts to actually meet a process requirement, because then we are working backwards. I think the outcome is that we need to have a tangible, finite timelines to get innovative products in our door, so that we can actually use them and see the impact of them. If it takes years to get a new product in the door, that means you've already missed the boat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that. I think this goes back to the ever being a discussion of security versus usability, right? And yeah, how do you maintain the developer velocity without causing friction or becoming the blockers, right? It's like something like I find AppSec leaders struggling with, and just there's no easy way around that. So awesome. I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is agentic AI. But before we do that, we have some questions for the audience. So Stella, if you don't mind asking that too, thank you. And while Stella is posing that question, I'm going to move on to the next topic. It's about agentic AI agents. We are hearing AI agents quite a lot these days, right? So I want to ask the panelists here, right? Like, is agentic AI just a buzzword which we are hearing, or how do you see fitting it into AppSec workflows, if at all? Do you have any experience that you want to share with the audience? Again, it's open for anybody to jump in.
Maybe I'll start with Dheeraj, and then we can add in here.
Yeah, I think we are doing some active work. We started mostly doing that, to be honest, is like that agentic AI development was done in our DevOps phase, where we are creating like agentic workflows to have a better threat modeling and anomaly detection. And and again, the most important thing is not trying to build tools on your own, trying to leverage tools from existing partners that we have. A great use case example is like Armor Code is coming up with a brand new tool called as Anya, which is an AI tool. So we are pushing ourselves to test the limits of that tool in a non-production environment, and very soon, if it works out well, and that's what the whole concept is, that a lot of good security companies are doing a lot of agentic workflow tools. So try not to build on your own. Use the advantage of the investment of time others have done for more nimble solutions. The second thing, what we are doing is like we are trying to use agentic for workflows and continuous learnings and feedback loop mechanisms, where we learn a threat model, we learn a vulnerability, we learn a SaaS exploit. We put that into an ML engine so that it can start learning. So that next time we are seeing the problem, the agentic AI will actually come and say, "Well, I've seen this exploit, and I have a And then the next level would be we will first start prompting those alerts and a human interacting or fixing them, and then at some point of time, again repetitive alerts will be, we will create agentic workflows to self-heal them. So that's the roadmap that we have. So I think I'm pretty excited about it, but sheepish also that we want to make sure that we are not inserting a lot of false positives.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit here and then I'll hand it over to Wen. So I totally agree. Reinventing the wheel does not make sense. And you talked about MCP and other ways of doing. But let's just take a step back here, right? So let's say there was a public breach on MGM or Clorox or anything of that sort. And let's walk through the workflow. So what happens here is whenever a breach happens, it's usually the CEO or the board will come back and ask the CISO, is my business at safe? They really don't care whether it's that application is running on your ES400 data center or a public cloud. If it is written in a C language, C++ or Java, is it a monolithic architecture or is it a microservices based architecture, or is it using AI? Now, the workflow that it triggers here is that first things first is what happened, what impact it had on the business, and then, how is it going to impact me or not? And this is where, thanks to the power of AI, we are leveraging AI to launch solution, which we'll be releasing and talking more about at the RSA, the agentic AI Anya here, where what happens is information is all existing in the public. So you don't need to go back and manually research this. So typically what people will do here is, in absence of an agentic solution, they will go back to a Google search, they will go back into dark web, they will go into modern chat GPT solutions. Now that part can be automated. So, agentic AI can go back, do a RAG query and find out what exactly happened. Now, once all the analysis is done, that it was the reservation application, it was because for log4j or whatever it is there. Then the second thing is the inward action starts, right? And in the inward action here would be, you will call your middle management and say, okay, is it impacting application or infrastructure or both? And then it goes down to the actual AppSec engineer, product security engineers, or the infrastructure engineer, that how much of it exists. Now, as we saw in things like log4j, we had seen instances where developers had log4j library on their laptop, which was just residing there, and critical issues and noise was created. Right. So that is where I feel, and as I said, AI is nothing but, in my mind, as a very intelligent automation where you go back, you find out all this information. And then the other part here is, and this is where the independent governance layer becomes more important, was every security tool itself, whether it is Copilot, whether it is Qualys, whether it is Wiz, everything will be having their own agentic piece. But then what needs to happen is from the AppSec perspective that somebody needs to look at holistic. Okay, what is my SCA tool saying? What is my SaaS tool is saying? What is my DaaS tool is saying? What is my infrastructure saying? So all of those things kind of get all tied together, and something which would have taken you a month or 2 months that can be done in a minute or 2 minutes, so that instead of then, going back all the way, a ticket is created for the developer to fix it. And this is again goes back to reducing your mean time to repair. And for every AppSec engineer, there are 200, 300 developers. You can leverage the power of AI of cutting it. So that is when we talk about agentic AI. It's not yet another agent that you want to create for the heck of it, but what value it provides. So, and Wen, I would love to hear your perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is, first I want to make sure that, when we talk about AI and generative AI, they're a little bit different, right? Well, generative AI and generative AI, they're a little bit different. The generative AI, so really kind of thinking about we are training and building a really expert that help us to do the work, where the generative is more about a generalist, right? So it actually define and help us solve a problem, and which kind of helps on manage in a really goal-oriented way to solve your problem, and that goal can be very different from company to company, industry to industry, right? So but you can tweak and change it to meet your need. Where from the general ones, it's harder to do that because it's an infinite possibility. Now you narrow it down to a very specific scope, so you can manage and tune it, right? So leveraging ability to from others, leverage the agentic AI modules to support your work, tweak it. It's going to give you a much higher ROI for sure. And also, I think another greatest benefit is because it's so focused on solving the problem for you. It's easy to measure it now. You know how effective it can be, right? So then you can really kind of be able to say that nope, there's no bias, nope, there's no hallucination, nope, this actually works for me because I have a very specific target of measurement.
Got it. Yeah. I'll try to summarize this conversation, because I think it's a very important term to understand, especially as we go in 2025 onwards. So I think what agentic AI or this concept provides is this automation, which I think everybody has targeted towards, right? Where I think context is something that has been missing for the longest time when it comes to product and application security. As an application security engineer, if I'm triaging a vulnerability or if I'm dealing with a fire, right? If I don't have the right context, it will take me hours, days, right? So I think that is what agentic AI is meant to disrupt, is this whole workflow or automate system, where it's really easy to bring external context from external services, like doing searches and whatnot, and then combining it with the internal enterprise level security best practices and knowledge, and doing it in a way that is very seamless for both the security engineers and the people who write code. And I think that's where I'm seeing a shift, where again, if I keep going back to secure by design or secure defaults, where it is possible to combine both, bringing the context from external services as well as correlating and figuring out how they actually apply to an organization with the internal best practices. So I definitely see agentic AI solutions and companies sort of building solutions using agentic AI. It has a lot of potential, I believe, in helping solve some of the main problems in the security space. So awesome. Yeah, I think with that said, we have about 5 minutes, so I'm gonna quickly cover one last topic, and I'll ask a question to everybody here, and then we can close it off. So the last topic is build versus buy, and how do we think about KPIs, right? So how do you make the decision of building in-house solutions versus relying on vendors for AI tooling? I think this goes back to the first question we had about, as organizations, how do we make that decision? And I think it is pretty obvious by now that, if there are vendors and tools out there that sort of bring those AI native capabilities, it makes sense for organizations to get those vendors on board as opposed to building something in-house. But I'm curious to see if anybody here has other opinions on this.
So maybe I can start with myself here. I am a strong believer that we should buy versus build, because we all are doing businesses. So I know Dheeraj is working at NADA right now. Their core business is storage, if you will, right? And like for Armor Code, our core business is building application security. So we cannot and should not be building our scanners and infrastructure security and all of those things, because there is is a reason why different businesses exist. For example, Anshuman, you're at Lyft, right? And now once that the business model is solved, I'm sure somebody can do wipe coding and create a Lyft application in 30 minutes, if you will. But, does it make sense that, if I have to go somewhere and do that? So that's where my bias is there with buying versus building, for that very reason. And I totally agree. And I saw comments from Dheeraj in the chat as well, that when you're doing that, you have to define the KPIs. You cannot fix or do if you're not measuring something, right? So the way I recommend here is that, okay, what's number one, starting with the outcome. What pain I am trying to solve? Oh, I am having 50 million or 5 million or 50,000 more findings because more AI code is coming in. Do I get more developers? No, it's actually going to reduce, right? Do I get more security engineers? No, everybody will ask you to reduce your security engineering time here. So you need to leverage a tool to, do that. So that is where, what is the outcome, and working backwards, and how am I going to measure that, okay, I am able to get the outcome or not. So yeah, that's my 2 cents here. Wen?
Yeah, definitely. I think the question of build versus buy is the age-old question, whether is that my competitive advantage is something that I'm good at. So do I really want to build that or buy? Because it's a problem that the industry is facing. Somebody is, much more smart than I am, more fun than I am to build this capability for me. So I will rely on them. But I think another what I'm been trying to, really thinking about realizing this from a buy perspective is that right now, if we start buying, AI product, and that's becoming hard to evaluate. So if you go back to the typical RP processes, you come in, review the tools, ask questions, you do a POC, great. If it finds 1,000 vulnerability, and it will find 1,000 vulnerability next time when you run the same code. But with some of the AI product right now, given the same thing, the result might be very different, right? So how does that work? So this is something that we need to start thinking about. How can we change our evaluation models? And so instead of to look at and what are new KPIs, what are things that are most important to you, and how long can we evaluate this, and then how well we can build this into the future operating model, right? So that, and we need to start partnering with our vendors and partners, and said that, okay, if we use your tool in the future, I know, how can you help me to address this potential problem where this is uncertain now, right? How can you help me to empower me so that I can comfortably rely on your tool in the future? I think, to me, that will be the shift of, hey, I know your tool is cool, I'm going to go forward with it, to, hey, I know your tools has a great capability, and let's work together to make sure that you maintain that level of capability as output.
Yeah. Dheeraj, do you want to close it off with any final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, no, I think firstly, thank you. This was a great session. Really enjoyed talking to the panelists and sharing their views. And I think I'm a very big fan of KPIs and outcomes, and that just not for security. In general, it applies for everything. So as it comes to AI adoption, I think what we are trying to do is we are looking at code commits in GitHub. We are looking at how many did developers committed, how much was AI generated, are your unit tests, or repetitive tasks in general, are driven by AI tools. So I think KPIs are very important. People can talk about that in generalities, but then, you have to start measuring them, like on a monthly, quarterly basis, that how many code commits did your AI tools do? How many SaaS test exploits or VM exploits did the AI tools find that out? And if the number, then the trend analysis, are you trending in the right direction? I think there's all like I have always believed that you cannot fix anything till the time you measure. So I think that's one of the key fundamentals, that you need to define what your KPIs are and how you measure them, and then once you start recording that data, then you can find ways to fix them. So I think it's a very these are first principles, and KPIs and outcomes are very important in that. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, just one more KPI that I like to personally consider myself, especially in this AI native world, is the number of operational hours saved, or how much efficiency have you gained. I've been trying to build some AI like solutions within Lyft, and I think that's one measure that I really care for, is if I'm building something for other teams, right? Are they actually finding that app useful, right? Are they actually saving number of hours they're using that app, versus how much time would it take for them to go do that thing themselves? So I think the efficiency gains is also another KPI that I find very useful and effective, especially in this AI world. Awesome. I think that's the end of this panel. I hope everybody enjoyed this, and I hope everybody learned a thing or two. I know I did. So I want to thank everybody again, especially the panelists. If there are any questions, I think we still have three or 4 minutes to take audience questions. But if not, I want to see if anybody has any last thoughts on this. There is a question from Vijay. The question is, sophistication of attacks has increased, making attackers' life much easier to recon, exfiltrate data, etc. throughout the kill chain. Please share any examples on type of attacks mitigated within the app life cycle. Dheeraj, I see you've answered that question, but do you mind giving a quick overview of what your answer is here?
Sorry, I thought I answered. Oh, is there a new question? Give me 1 second. I'm just. Oh, I think I answered that, right? But okay, is that the same question? Like sophistication?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think the like you are absolutely right that the sophistication of an attacker will increase. And I mean this is the age-old, well-known game in security. They you have to be 100 times right. They have to be one time right to make an exploit. So I think it's just like a cat and mouse game that every security practitioner plays. So we just have to make sure that we are 2 steps ahead of and always monitoring most of our potential attacks and exploits. And yes, the attacks will get more sophisticated, and the name of the game is to make sure that the tools, the mindset, the culture that we have in the organization allows us to actually stay more modern, more nimble, more agile, so that we can actually take all the new attacks and new sophisticated exploits, and we are prepared for that. If I use a product which is 30 years old in technology, then I'm asking for trouble myself. So I think that's the name of the game, is that you it's almost like physical fitness or running, that you have to stay in shape, and for that you have to modernize your stack. You have to be staying updated in your security mindset and culture.
And I don't think it changed. I mean, with the AI helping an attacker, it doesn't really help. It changed the speed mostly, right? So as a defender, we just have to do everything perfect in a faster manner now, right? So it's really that ability to keep being fit, be able to practice the hygiene and best practices. But how do we do it faster and more precise? And I think then that's a question whether, again, going back, can we use AI to help it to do that? And that's what we're here talking about this. So it's a tool for attacker and for us too, but the name of the game is really about speed.
And just to add to both what Wen and Dheeraj said, and that's where that independent governance, automation, and all becomes even more important, because now it's no longer a choice. Like typically, bad guys are 2 steps ahead. See, the ChatGPT came more easily accessible in last couple of years, but the paper was written in 2016 or 2017. So that LLM paper and the research was written like way before, and it is just that now it gives an advantage to the defenders for us to kind of leverage it and increase our automation. And the bad guys will be working on the next set of things or attack vectors, whether it's quantum computing and things like that. And but again, I cannot emphasize is that why application security and AI in application security is more important than ever, given the landscape that we are in today.
Well said, Nikhil. Awesome. We are at time. So again, I want to be respectful and thank you everybody for joining today and have a good day.